What do you think? I'll start off this way. If Tom Brady, because I've watched his whole career here in New England, can Tom Brady say in the same sentence, I was double barreling the TV, F you guys? Can he say F you and then say the noise doesn't matter? Well, if the noise doesn't matter, why are you devoting any amount of energy to flipping off the guys who say you're a bad sport or you're not into it, right?
Well, Michael, you know they all say the noise doesn't matter, and most of them either obsessively read or they obsessively have people who tell them what was said. And, look, I came up covering Jerry Rice, who managed to convince not only everyone around him, but himself that he was being slighted. I'll never forget, Michael, I was one of my early training camps in Rockland up at Sierra College, blistering hot Rockland. Jerry Rice, first interview back after the offseason, we're crowded around him after a hot afternoon practice. And he said, man, everyone's saying that I have been surpassed. Everyone's saying Michael Irvin's better than me. Andre Rison's better than me. Sterling Sharp's better than me. I'm going to show him. And I'm literally sitting here going, dude, nobody thinks you've been surpassed. Like, it literally, he was already considered probably the greatest receiver in NFL history at that point. We're talking like 1990, era. And, nobody had said that. But, he managed, like Michael Jordan, we saw in The Last Dance, it's constantly convincing yourself you're feeling slighted. And sure, Tom Brady has done that. And he had one of the great gifts. He was the 199th pick. So, some people can name off all the people who were drafted ahead of them. I don't even think Tom could do all 198, but, he obviously has used that to fuel him. But yeah, it is a hard thing when you say, I don't listen to the noise, but you're also, flipping off the TV. Interesting juxtaposition.
Now, Mike Silver, I know you, I remember vividly, like yesterday, I remember you outside of the Patriots team bus in Pittsburgh when they won their first conference championship in this Brady-Belichick era. So I remember you, covering this team very closely, and you were in New Orleans for the first Super Bowl win. So you've seen all phases and stages of the Patriots dynasty and the Brady ascension. I wonder if you can speak to Brady personally, what's happening. And I made a joke about, he's in the production business, content business. He wasn't really like this the first 10, 12 years of his career. He started getting into Tom versus time in the later Patriot years. And I'd say he's making up for lost time since he's become a member of the Buccaneers. How do you explain it? Do you think he was always this, or is it a guy figuring out, wait a minute, I got a story to tell. I can tell it in a way that nobody else can. Why not jump in and give him everything I got?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to go all the way back to early 2002 and that bus. Now, journalists like us notice those little things, right? We notice who are the people like getting that extra access walking to the bus. So I was probably watching you going, who's this young guy who, is up here with all these sources? And so I appreciate that. And that was a surreal game because, Sports Illustrated, our MO was to cover every possible angle in the days leading up to the game and try to go out with people and go to both cities. And I remember going to an Elton John, Billy Joel show with Robert and Jonathan Kraft at the Fleet Center.
Nice.
And going out with, I think, Jerome Bettis in Pittsburgh. And I had a lot of good stuff, including nice conversation with young Tom Brady at the facility. I was prepared, dude. But you know what I was not prepared for? Drew Bledsoe being the story. And I remember at halftime, because Tom had hurt his ankle, Drew had come in, led him down the field for a touchdown. So Josh Elliott, who later went on to big fame, but at the time was my reporter, like basically my reporting assistant, he and I at halftime in that press box just going, dude, what are we going to do? Now, luckily, Drew's one of the all-time great dudes when it comes to this. And Josh got with his father. I followed Drew to the bus. I remember Drew telling me, I'm going to fly back. I'm going to call you later and I'll give you everything you need on the phone. And he did. And it was amazing. I also remember back then, Bill Belichick and I were pretty tight, and which, so it was a long time ago. Yeah, back then. Not so much now because because he does not block out the noise. But that's another story. We could get into that. But I remember, back then there was no 2-week break that season for the Super Bowl. It was only a 1-week break. And in fact, because of 9/11, it was Super Bowl had already been delayed a week. And long story, but basically they were going straight to New Orleans for that game, unlike, most years now. So Tom with the high ankle sprain, Drew, who had been obviously a franchise player who had looked really good in that game. So there was a real question, as you remember, who was going to start the Super Bowl. And I remember saying to Bill as I left the bus area, you're going to bleep and start Drew. Half kidding, but half like that's what I really believed. And naturally, Bill did the opposite, and he was right. But it was, it seemed like a good thing at the time. So that's my very long filibuster of a lead up to answering your actual question, which is, I think part of it was being in that Belichickian world for so long and not sharing anything. Part of it has to do with the way technology's evolved and social media, and now you can get your message out directly. And so Tom doesn't have to worry about how he's being portrayed in many contexts because he's controlling that message. And part of it, I think, is just, to me, Michael, he just seems like he's going to be really bored when he retires. And he tried it for 30 days, 40 days, and that didn't work. But, he's already signed a TV deal. He's tweeting at LeBron, hey, I know how I regard Twitter, and I'm a lot on Twitter and I'm over the top, but there is a self-promotional, almost clowning element of it that I don't take that seriously. And if I were freed from the self-promotional, public-facing realities of it, I don't think I'd be sharing a whole lot personally. But
tell me about it. Right.
Yeah, right. But Tom, it seems like he's, I don't know. I don't want to say thirsty, but he's super into it right now. And listen, I knew him back when he used to go hang out and we'd go to News Cafe, and he was like a real dude who didn't just eat avocado ice cream and, drank once in a while. And so that's the Tom Brady I've always known, but certainly the Tom Brady that evolved was much more distant and much more controlled. And so I do like seeing him come out of his shell, but yeah, there's definitely a method to it. He's got a production company, he's got a docuseries, and now he's got the biggest contract for a TV analyst in sports, at least football history.
Well, listen, I tell you that it really connects. I think thirsty is a fair statement about Brady, but then there's also this. Now, you said one of the things you did was you went to an Elton John, was it Elton John, Billy Joel concert?
It was an Elton John, Billy Joel concert. Yeah, there's a great story that goes with it, by the way.
Well, listen, Elton John, still doing his thing, well into his 70s. The Rolling Stones, I saw them at Gillette Stadium in the early 2000s. They're still doing their thing. So maybe Tom Brady is in that tradition. It's a little thirsty, and it's a little, hey, I'm not letting this go. I still have the ability to do it. So I'll still do it.
Yeah,
tell me the Elton John story. Tell me the Elton John story. Then I'm going to ask you something else. Tell me that Elton John story.
And I would say this, like literally the last game I saw Tom Brady play might be my favorite Tom Brady game. And I'm a Montana guy. I covered him, very close to him. And I always thought the lost classic for Montana was the 83 NFC Championship game, down 21-0 in the fourth quarter at RFK, and somehow brought the 49ers back, and then they lost at the end. A couple of dubious calls in there, but I won't get into it. But to me, what Brady did in that last game, no, he did not win, and it was 27-3 and not 28-3. But to get that team back into that game in that context, it's one of the great things I've ever seen, and certainly, one of my favorite Brady games. Yeah, the Elton John. You know what? I'm gonna save the Elton John story, but
Okay.
The filibuster factor. I'm a little, you know,
All right.
I'm just a little self-conscious about how much I'm talking right now.
All right. That's all right. We'll get to that.
For once.
That's the next time. The next time you come back, we'll get Elton John. But I want to ask you this. And we've talked so much about the offseason and all the things that have happened. You know, Russell Wilson leaving Seattle and Deshaun Watson traded to the Browns. I mean, just so much activity and wide receivers being traded and Tom Brady retiring and then unretiring. When you look at this season, the 22 season, are you looking forward to, you know, you go back to your Sports Illustrated days and say, I want that one. I want this plum story. Give me the first pick. If you have the first pick of all the stories, which one do you pick?
That's a great question. And really, I would say all of this, you know, it really started with the Brady to Tampa offseason where quarterbacks are starting to understand, you know, their place in the world and how much power they have. And teams are getting less patient and more willing to just do dramatic things at the quarterback position. So you saw Brady leave. That was an anomaly, but the Stafford trade and, you know, certainly now the quarterback market in general is more volatile. We've seen the Aaron Rodgers stuff play out. So, yeah, there are a lot of, you know, super intriguing stories. I'm very, very interested in the 49ers and Trey Lance, who Kyle Shanahan gave up so much to get. And now, presumably, it will be Trey Lance time. It's a very, very good team that, you know, came within a whisker, potentially a dropped Jarquiski Tart interception of going to the Super Bowl. You know, very, very well coached and a lot of firepower. And, you know, you hear mixed things about Trey Lance. We always knew he was going to be raw. He hadn't played much. You know, he only played one game with the COVID year, never led a 2-minute drive, and he was coming from a, you know, small program. But I'm just so intrigued because not just the athleticism and the arm talent, but I've heard consistently how intelligent this young man is. And when you pair that with a Kyle Shanahan offense and what he wants his quarterback to understand and assimilate, that's super exciting to me. So, you know, we don't know how that's actually going to go till he's on the field, but, you know, he showed up at training camp and last year people were thinking, you know, in the building, well, Jimmy's going to be the guy. We need to, you know, situationally sub him in once in a while, but, you know, he's not competing for a job. And then that first week, he was so on point and his grasp of the offense was so, you know, eerily high level that they freaked out and they were kind of like, well, maybe he is going to start right away. And then he kind of hit a wall, as a lot of young players do, and he just, you know, regressed a little in terms of, you know, the on the field stuff, and they kind of took a breath and said, okay, it's Jimmy's team, and that's how it'll go. But you know, you never really know till they're out there. But man, I am super intrigued by what he could do, and I also am super hardened in my belief that Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones and talked himself out of it, which is a whole other story. But be that as it may, very excited to see what Trey could do.
So look at this. So the next time you come back, we got an Elton John story that you're going to get into. And we got a Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones, but he talked himself out of it. And I think Chris Sims agrees with you on that too. Chris Sims agrees with you. And as a final question for you, I know you're intrigued by the 49ers. I am too. Trey Lance, what's he going to do? How about Debo? It's gotten real quiet here. Debo wanted out. Now you don't hear anything. Is Debo week one? Is he starting for the San Francisco 49ers or somebody else?
That's a great question. It depends whether you believe that this is about money, as it usually is, and that money can go a long way toward smoothing over all these things, or if there's something else weird going on, right? So, right, exactly. So if there's some, you know, we've heard hints that he doesn't want to be in, you know, Northern California. He doesn't, you know, there's something else about him being there. If it's that, then maybe not. But I think it's probably one of those things where, a lot of it can be addressed. Because, look, if I'm Deebo Samuel, I'm like, look, I was already doing great as a receiver. It's hard to take the contact I take and get paid in this league. Look at A.J. Brown. The Titans didn't want to pay him, and now you switch me to running back midseason. You save your season. I'm basically a running back. Now, we know they don't get second contracts very often, let alone third. So I'm doing two things. You've put me more in harm's way and put me in a position that's a hybrid where it's even harder for me theoretically to get paid. And meanwhile, everybody else is getting paid. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, we're seeing the money. So my instincts tell me, and this is not any great reporting on it, my instincts tell me that this is something that money could solve. And if the 49ers step up, which I think it would be a good business decision in the short term, at least, to do, then he'll be there week 1.
Fantastic. Listen, Mike Silver, one of the best reporters in the country, man. I really appreciate you. I've always looked up to you. I'm going to tell you that publicly. I've always looked up to the way you've done your business. And hey, I'll get there one day. I'll get there one day. And I still remember.
Listen, man. Hey, you weren't just watching me by the bus. You were formulating your own game, because I'm a big fan as well, and you're there.
You can do both.
Yeah, exactly.
You can work on your game and say, okay, I see what he's doing there. I see what he's doing.
Sure.
But we're going to talk more about it. I'm telling you, man. Now you got me. You've done a great job. You've done the Elton John tease. You've got Mac Jones. We got a lot of stuff to talk to.
Wait till your partner in crime gets back, and then it's going to get even worse, because I haven't seen him in a minute either. I'd love to talk to him as well.
Appreciate you, Mike. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.